Welcome to the screencast for Do Computers Think by John Searle. So you can find this on the bottom of page 165 in our textbooks. That's a picture of John Searle in the bottom right there. He's a contemporary philosopher. He's out of UC Berkeley, and he wrote this article exactly 40 years after the article from Turing that we looked at in the last screencast. He proposes a thought experiment, and this article is pretty short because this is a simple thought experiment to try and demonstrate that a computer that passes the Turing test does not count as thinking. This thought experiment is often called the Chinese room. He asks you to imagine a man who speaks only English is placed inside of a room. Someone outside of the room types sentences in Chinese characters that are fed to the man in the room. You could say type, but it can be any sort of input. You see the little cartoon on the right, and they're just throwing a rock with Chinese characters in there. So the man inside the room, the English-speaking man, gets the slip of paper or the rock or reads it off of a monitor, and he sees sentences in Chinese. Remember, he only speaks English, so he doesn't understand what's on the monitor, the rock, or the slip of paper. He does, however, have an instruction manual. And you can imagine, again, it doesn't have to be realistic in a thought experiment, it just has to be possible. This room that he's in can be the size of a football field. It could have hundreds of volumes. He might have infinite time to reconstruct whatever he needs to perform his job, which we'll get to right now. He takes a piece of paper with the Chinese writing on it, and he matches the symbols that he's received to the instructions in the manual. So I have a little example here of what a little subset of the instruction manual might look like. He'd take this string of Chinese characters that I have up here on the screen, and he'd follow instructions that looked something like this. If this is the first symbol, turn to page 300. Find the second symbol in the columns. Okay, now we have the first and the second symbol, so go get this other book, volume 33, turn to page 47 and look for the third symbol, and so on. So once he gets to reconstructing the whole string there, then it goes backwards, and the instruction manual tells him what to write down in Chinese characters just by how their pictures look. So he would faithfully copy the Chinese characters either by typing them on the screen or by writing them on a piece of paper or a rock, and then he'd spit it back outside of the room. So the Chinese speaker who's still hanging out outside would get an appropriate response to whatever they fed into the room, and it would look like the man in the room could speak Chinese. But we know better. We know he followed instructions in English and just matched pictures to pictures. So maybe this cartoon, if you're feeling a little confused, might be able to illustrate it a little bit better for you. But of course, the analogy is that the instruction manual that the English speaker follows inside of the room is akin to software or programming that a computer could use to fool the interrogator in the Turing test. The problem is the man in the room, and supposedly, if you think that this thought experiment defeats the Turing test, shows that a computer doesn't understand the meaning of the language. It's just manipulating symbols. So outside behavior can't be the only metric for thinking. That was the goal of the Chinese room experiment. And I guess if this is confusing, I can try and think of different ways to explain it to you. Just let me know in the comments underneath this video. I want you to start thinking of whether or not you think this Chinese room thought experiment demonstrates that the Turing test cannot be the only test for a machine to find out whether or not a machine can think.